today we're going to get into Vargas in a way that you normally won't find mentioned, but a very important way, and that is a mathematical way. Why is that important? Because if you think about it even for a moment, you realize that Vargas are mathematical. They're a completely mathematical part of astrology. Because we take this zodiac, which is already divided into 12 parts, and we divide each sign into smaller parts. So for one Varga chart, we'll divide each sign into 2 parts. But for another Varga chart, we'll divide each sign into 9 parts. For another one, we'll divide each sign into 12 parts. So really, we're just dividing it up mathematically. So the very foundation of Vargas is mathematics. And there's very little said in the old books about Vargas, unfortunately. It's almost like an ignored subject, practically, when you think about it. The old books mostly talk about the Rashi chart, yogas, planetary permutations in the Rashi chart that give specific effects, with an occasional mention of a yoga that involves another Varga chart, usually just the Navamsha, maybe the Hora, maybe the Drekana, and that's pretty much it. And that's all you really find. Now, Brihat Parashara, he gives us basically 3 things on the Vargas. One thing, he gives us the calculation of the Vargas, which is the beginning, the foundation of the mathematics. The other thing he gives is he tells us what each Varga is looked at for. So, Chatra Tamtra is for fortune, Drekana is for siblings and happiness with siblings, and so on. So he tells us what each Varga is for. And the indications of Vargas video, I talk about the things that he talks about in that section of Brihat Parashara. The other thing he gives, which is completely ignored, is he gives divisional deities for each Varga. So one that is commonly used, one of the only ones, is that the planet falls in the Hora ruled by the sun or the Hora ruled by the moon, which means the sun or the moon is always going to be the Hora deity of a planet in any sign. But there's similar deities for all the other Vargas. For instance, for the Navamsha Varga, we've got Rakshasa, Deva, and Manusha, or demonic, angelic, or human divisions. Those are the deities. In the Drekana, we've got different rishis representing the 3 Drekanas. So in all these other Vargas, we have different deities or different, rishis or other cosmic powerful forces. For instance, in the Dasamsha, the lords of the Dasamshas are the lords of the 10 directions and their deities. So there's this whole body of mythology and symbology to the Varga charts that's, symbolized by these deities. It's a completely ignored part of deities, or of the Varga charts. Those are the 3 things that Parashara gives us on the Vargas. And those 3 things pretty much take mostly deep insights. The first thing he says, just the different Vargas, what they're for, that's easy. Drekana is for siblings, happiness with siblings, no problem. The Vamsha is for marriage. Saptamsha is for generating offspring. That's easy. But the mathematical part takes a lot of thought to get the juice out of it. And the same with the part having to do with the deities of the different Vargas. Just knowing that one of the Drekanas is ruled by Durvasu, what does that really mean? Well, you really have to think and contemplate the symbology of Durvasu, the angry rishi who curses everyone he comes across, to understand the Drekana fully. So what we're going to do in the next series of courses is we're going to look into each Varga very deeply. We're going to look into the Varga mathematically, so we understand mathematically what we're meant to use that Varga for. Mathematically, we'll be pointed to what are the important things for this Varga, above and beyond the things that Parashara mentioned in simple Sanskrit. What is the mathematics pointing to in addition that I need to look for? And then we'll look at the deities as well and say, well, what do these deities mean is really happening to this planet? How is this planet really manifesting based on the deity that it is related to via the Varga? Okay? And all that we'll get from Parashara. So in the next series of courses, we're going to cover all those 3 things. The other thing we're going to cover is, in some texts, mostly the texts that sort of have a Greek-Persian influence, the Yavana, Jataka, and so on, they have a lot of symbology bearing on some of the different Vargas. Not all of them, but some of them. Like they very much get into descriptions of different Drekanas. For instance, one of the Drekanas is a woman in a pit covered with snakes. So they have these really cool symbologies. They don't just have it for the Drekana, they have it for several of the other Vargas. And so we'll get into some of those symbologies, which appear to, they're not really a Parashar origin, but they're really interesting, really useful at times. Then in addition to that, different texts have a few yogas bearing on different Vargas. Mostly it's just a couple of the beginning Vargas. There's no yogas bearing on the Kavadamsha or the Akshavadamsha. There's a few yogas where they look at things on the Shashtiamsha, but really not much, okay? But we're going to look at all those yogas too, which are coming from other sources besides Parashara. So when we get done with this Varga course, we're going to look at all the 16 Vargas. We're going to look at them all those levels, and we're really going to understand Vargas. And you're going to just see a whole magical world at your disposal to help you see more things that are happening. Because you know how you go to the chart and you go, well, geez, they're having this trouble with their health, and I'm looking at their Rashi chart, and I just don't see it. And then you look at the Trim Samsha, the chart of disease, and you're going, I still don't see it. Why are they having this bad luck with their body? Well, we'll figure out why that was missed because of another Varga chart that mathematics will point to we need to use. Okay? So, we're going to learn a lot of neat things. Okay, so, the first thing we're going to start today is there's 5 groups of Vargas, basically, okay? I'm just going to write them with Roman numerals. Roman number 1, Roman number 2, Roman number 3, 4, and 5. So there's 5 groups of Vargas. Why is there 5 groups? Well, Parashara gives us Vargas. The first Varga is the Rashi, which is number 1, what you see. The last Varga he gives us is Varga 60, the Shashtiamsa, where each sign is divided into 60 small parts of 1/2 degree each. And that's the last Varga he gives. Okay? Now, and then he gives lots of Vargas in between that. How many? Well, in total he gives 16. So there's the Rashi chart on this end, the Shashtiamsha on this end, and 14 other Vargas before. Now, because he starts as 1 and goes to 60, in theory, he could have given us 60 Vargas, right? He could have given us a full 60. But for some reason, he skips lots of Vargas, okay, which is really interesting. For instance, he doesn't talk about the 5th Varga, the Panchamsha, the 6th Varga, the Shashtamsha, the 8th Varga, the Ashtamsha, or the 11th Varga, the Ekatamsha. Okay? However, Tajika astrology uses those 4 Vargas too. Okay? So there's something to those Vargas, and they have their purpose and use, but for some reason Parashar doesn't. He wants us to focus on these 16 Vargas. That's what we're going to do in this course. And you're going to see how those 16 Vargas really take care of anything you have to tackle somehow. Okay? And then he doesn't have like number 36 for some reason. Why not? I don't know. He doesn't have number 32. Why not? I don't know. But he has number 30. So it's really interesting how he decided that to only mention certain Vargas. I think in theory we could use every Varga. How could we use every Varga? Well, based on the mathematics and the groupings, which I'm about to show you, we can understand how every Varga could have a use. Okay? But for those Vargas, we're not going to have the deities, and of course we're not going to have any yogas on them. So I'm not going to cover those Vargas that aren't mentioned Parashar in this series of classes, this course on Vargas. At some point, I might want to talk about some of those a little bit. I think all those Vargas can be put to use, and you could use a full 60. But you won't be able to use them to the same degree of flavor as the 16 of Parashara because we just aren't going to have those deities. And like I said, Parashara seems to, in those 16, it seems to really have what you really need. And studying other Vargas beyond that Could be interesting. Whether it'll make you a better astrologer is hard to say. Okay, so just be aware of that. He only mentions 16 out of 60 Vargas for some reason. Okay, now why 16? Well, there could be a reason, is that there's something called Kala. And Kala means lots of things. It's the measurement of time, but also, it's the name of my software, right? But it also has to do with, it's also a symbolic name of the number 16. Okay? And 16 has, is sort of an important number in Hinduism for some reason. For instance, there's the 16 digits of the moon. Okay, so the moon is considered to have 16 parts to it. Why is that? I'm not even sure, but it does. So for some reason, 16 seems to be a number of, artistic perfection, I guess is the word I'm trying to use. And since there is so much of an art to astrology, I think he decided just to pull the 16 most important Vargas and have us focus on them. Not that those other Vargas aren't there or doing something, because obviously they exist in the mathematical world, which means they exist in the astrological world. But he wanted us to focus on those 16 that were the most important. And that's the place to start always, with the most important stuff. And if you ever master those most important things, then you can start creating things on your own that he hasn't talked about. So the challenge is to master those 16 in this lifetime. So that's what we're going to start doing. Okay, so there's 5 groups of Vargas. Varga 1 to 60. Now, why 5 groups? Well, because if you take 60 and divide it by 12, which is how many Rashis are, right? There's 12 Rashis. Take 60 divided by 12, you get 5. Okay? So that's why there's 5 groups. The first group of Vargas is Vargas 1 through 12. Okay? The second group of Vargas is Vargas 13 to 24. The third group of Vargas is Vargas 25 through 36. The fourth group is Vargas 37 through 48. And the fifth group of Vargas is Vargas 49 through 60. So, these are the 5 groups. How do you figure out what group of Vargas in? Well, you just take the number of the Vargas, say you got the 20th Varga, the Vimsamsha, then you subtract multiples of 12. So 20 minus 12 is, 12 goes into 21s with the remainder of 8, so it falls into the second group. Okay, pretty simple. It's real easy, basic math, don't even have to explain it. So 5 groups of Vargas. Now each of these groups represents existence on another level. Okay? And I'm going to talk about this actually differently than I have in the past. So if some of you have heard me talk about these 5 groups before, and I say some different things, just listen to the different things, okay? Okay, now the first group of Vargas has to do with all the concrete things. Parashara says the first Varga, for instance, is our Deha, our body. The second Varga is our wealth and accomplishment, the things we actively are able to put concretely and accomplish and succeed within our life, which make us wealthy. The Drakana has to do with siblings, concrete thing. The Chaturtamsha with our fortune. Fortune in the sense of the concrete things that make us fortunate and lucky in this world, like a nice house, money in the bank, treasure, those kinds of things. The Saptamsha has to do with children, concrete things. The Navamsha has to do with your spouse, your marriage. The Saptamsha or the Dasamsha has to do with the great things that you concretely do in the world, usually through your career. The Dwadasamsha has to do with parents. So all the Vargas he mentions in this first group are the things in our life that are in our world. Everything that's in our world that we can have, touch, love, or hate is ruled by these first 12 Vargas. So that's the concrete world that we live in. It's the realm of our existence. So those first group of Vargas has to do with the realm of our existence. Everything that's in our life around us. That's what our life consists of. That's the space that we get to operate in. You understand? That's the room we have to learn, to grow, to share, and to be. Okay, we can't go outside that space. We can't have siblings we don't have, right? If we have 3 siblings, that's creates the space in our life in respect to siblings and so on. If we have $1 million, that creates the realm of our existence. That $1 million is part of it. So everything that's around us that exists is these 12 Vargas, this first group of 12. Now, we deal with all those things very differently though, right? Okay? But that's the realm of our existence. So this first group is the concrete reality that we live in. The realm of our existence with which we're able to operate in, make choices, and survive in. Okay? And that group of Vargas is symbolic of the ether element. Why the ether element? Because ether creates space. And so all these concrete things basically create the space that we live within. Okay? As material concrete things. Not as a spiritual being who's connected to God and whose consciousness is above and beyond us. Not like that. But in the context of somebody who's living on planet Earth. It's these earthly things that create the space of our existence. Okay? And one of the properties of ether element is to create spaces. Okay? It's a space that our life unfolds in. These first 12 Vargas. Okay? The second group of Vargas has to do with our relationship to all those things. Okay? The happiness, the understanding, and the devotion to those things. The Shodamsha, the 16th Varga, has to do with the happiness with those things. The 20th Varga, the Vimsamsha, has to do with devotion. And the 24th Varga, the Siddhamsha, has to do with understanding. And also the Shodamsha, Parashar says, is for happiness and unhappiness with vehicles. Okay? So it sounds like a really concrete Varga. But then he also goes on to say, the Bhava Lord that's in a good Shodamsha does great, and the Bhava Lord in a bad Shodamsha, does bad. So we're supposed to use the Shodamsha to see if we have happiness or unhappiness with anything. Because the Shodamsha has to do with the happiness and our ability to be mobile, to let that thing into our life. Okay? Anything we have in our life, to have it, we have to have an adaptability, a mobility to have that thing. So, even to have a relationship, you have to have the mobility in your life to stop your work and go out and have the relationship, right? But there's some people that are just so stuck in their rut, they're just going to sit there and maybe do something else all day, and they don't have that mobility to go out and have a relationship. Well, that's the mobility of the Shodamsha. It's our ability to get up, be happy, and embrace the next thing that's in our life. All these three Vargas have to do with relating and connecting to things. Okay? And in connecting to those things, we bring those things closer. Through the Shodamsha, we have the